Good morning, everyone. This is Jared with selfliquid.com. And so we're just only about 11 minutes into the opening session, and market is, as a whole, pretty much kind of pulling back. So overnight, the futures were down about 1%, and that's basically where they opened. Excuse me. But you can see here that this is sort of how I positioned myself this morning, or excuse me, at least going into this morning. And a lot was based on just where the NASDAQ was and Amazon. So you can see here just from the daily perspective on Amazon, it came into this 618 retracement from the previous high to low swing. And right now, what I'd be looking for, at least, is just sort of an introductory, kind of pullback. I would look for something like 63.34. So if we dive over to some of the other indexes really quick, we'll look at the S&P. You'll see that it hasn't really been banged up quite as bad as the NASDAQ. But much like it, it's started to cross below the 34 EMA, and let's just run our first, or what would be our first kind of big area of support. So right around 2,500. Now what we can also do is grab this, and we'll run from the high to low to high, and that'll probably project somewhere below 2,300 at 2,100. So I really think that that's ultimately where, excuse me, just can't stop yawning this morning. So I ultimately think that's kind of where we're headed, is around 2,100. So let's look at some of the bigger names. We'll just look at the FANG index here. Okay, so here's the FANG index. And you can see really just about everything about this is looking kind of short right now. So from the short time frame, so 13, 39, and 78, they're all signaling a bigger short move coming with this squeeze here, coiling. So that's just something to be aware of. So on, like I said, this is just an index, so it's not actually anything that you can trade, but it just gives you an idea of where kind of the FANG stocks are headed. And, just looking at this here, we talked about a little bit last week, is that this aligned really nicely with, this left, or what would be sort of the left shoulder of a head and shoulders. And you can see it a little bit better here on the weekly chart. So Netflix is one that we'll look at next. And that's really the big, I think in my mind, the big topic this week is, what is Netflix earnings going to do? So going into today, I did have some short exposure set up already. And, I was thinking to myself, going into today, just looking at last night, I was like, dang, I may have gotten in just a little early. I was thinking that, there's a possibility kind of going into earnings on Thursday, it could chop, with maybe some slight up movement into 350. But, this is even better for me, so far at least. So it's creeping up near down 2%. It is currently below the 34 EMA. So that's, in this situation, that's sort of exactly what I was kind of looking for here. So let's take a look at Amazon. That's another one that I have some short exposure on. And Amazon, exactly sort of like the NASDAQ, we'd really just butted up against a lot of overhead resistance. And to me, this was basically just a bounce within, the overall bigger move down. And Right now we're really seeing a pretty good flush across all of tech. So I would not expect, this to slow down at the moment. Now, give me just a second here. I'll be right back. All right. So looking at Amazon here, it's really just like sort of the NASDAQ. And like I said, you can see that we had this nice move up and slammed right into kind of multiple points. So from this high at 2050 and a half to the low here that we saw on New Year's Eve, or excuse me, Christmas Eve, we basically ran right into a 50% retracement of that move. Also from this high to low swing, a 786, and then from this low to high to low, 100% of that move. So just a lot of overhead resistance there at Amazon. That's why I got short going into it today. And you can see, the first kind of area, really the first two areas that I'm looking at are going to be at 1535 and 1491. So, with both these kind of levels of resistance here, the 50% of this low to high swing, it also aligns with the first kind of standard deviation level off this 34 EMA right at 1493. So when you have multiple levels kind of line up like that, to me, that's, kind of where you'll find price terminating. And so, I would expect for it to kind of break through this 382 and probably hold on here at this 50% before we see a bit of a bounce. And then the next kind of area like that is right here at the 786. And then basically the second standard deviation, 1370, along with this bigger 382 level. So a lot of support there. So going into kind of the next few here of the FANG index. So we'll look at Google. And, very much like the rest of tech. And, typically when some of the bigger names in tech kind of get moving, they all tend to kind of move in that direction. So we'll look at Facebook. Same thing, nearly exactly the same on Facebook. So Facebook, from high to low, it still has quite a ways before it even gets near the 34 EMA. But from the from the low to high to low swing, you can see 100%, symmetrical move of that. And then from that high to low, right into 786, and also right into the second or the first standard deviation level off the 34 EMA. So right at 142.14, that purple kind of spotted level there. So, of the FANG stocks, Facebook and Netflix to me have definitely been the weakest and probably will continue to be the weakest. Facebook has earnings coming up on, I can't remember what day, I think it's the 30th, but just here in a few weeks. And it's one where, I am not expecting, it's one I probably actually won't do anything on just because of how banged up it's, really gotten. And so I don't know, it's just always something like that where earnings can be just so sort of random in how they play out. I talked a lot about this last week, and just to reiterate, just when when you're playing earnings, you're not necessarily um, the odds aren't necessarily in your favor, just because anything can happen with earnings. A company can be doing really great, something on the earnings call spooks um, whoever and the market, and the thing sells off. So I think it's something to be very cautious of. If you are thinking about trading earnings, just always go into it very cautious. So this is one that I also had exposure to, and this is something I really wasn't expecting this morning, which was, and this is sort of just one of those things with stocks, is that can kind of just happen to you, not really expecting it. This trade was kind of cruising along, doing really well, and gapped down 5% because they announced that they're going to be buying Goldcorp to make the largest mining company in the world. So not ideal news. So I'm down a little bit on this now. I mean, I think I was up like 100 something bucks, and now I'm down 150 bucks. So not a huge thing, but just kind of annoying. And I mean, I still like metals higher. You can look, gold's up a little bit right now. Silver's up a little bit right now. So I am going to just hold on to this, because overall it's still kind of within the uptrend here. And, I don't think that that's necessarily a terrible thing. It's really just sort of a, hey, you're about to dump some cash, and that typically happens. The company that's doing the buying stock normally tanks. With the company that's being bought, you see they generally bounce. So yeah, here's the one that's being bought, up 11.5%, and of course the one I have is doing the buying. So welcome to trading. This is how it goes sometimes. But anyway, my tech shorts are doing really well this morning. Kind of makes up for the mining company not doing so hot. But anyway, as a whole, things are kind of moving in my direction. And I would just look for much of really the same this week. I'm expecting Netflix to continue to pull back. If you look at this just from a 195-minute chart, so with a 195-minute, the reason I look at these kind of weird numbers like this is to get an equal number of bars. So with a 195, you're going to get 2 candles per day. And so what I would be looking at here is for Netflix to kind of just come back down to where it chopped around so much, right around 314.34. So if we run from the low to high here, that puts us right around 300. So, I mean, Netflix can come back quite a ways and still be sort of within this uptrend. And that's just because it had such a monstrous kind of rocket move up. I mean, it was up, I believe, off this low like 45% or something like that. So really just a crazy kind of move up in Netflix. So let's look at just a few other things this morning, but that's really about all I've got here for the morning. Not just a ton to really do with a move like this. So let's take a peek back at the indexes. So kind of holding their spot here, right around 1% down, a little bit more. Let's open up oil getting a little banged up here. And just from like this perspective, like looking at a 195 again, to me, oil looks like it could easily come back to right around 50. So, may see some more selling here in oil. Let's look at bonds. So bonds up just a little bit there, not much to write home about. Just a little up move there. Let's take a look at the dollar. So dollar finding support here. Looks like it could go on a run. So there is a weekly and a daily squeeze here in the dollar, and that's something to pay attention to just because with the dollar strong, um, it definitely puts pressure on the stock market. And the easiest way to think about it is, it then takes more dollars to buy stock. So any kind of strength in the dollar is not good for the equity market. Now, I don't think it has much left steam in it. I mean, I think that we'd get up to sort of this area here around 148, 115. And that may be the end of this move for here. I mean, you can see on a weekly, in my mind, that it looks sort of like a head and shoulders setting up. It's not the cleanest, kind of looking neckline, but you can definitely see what I'm talking about here. So I would definitely pay attention to that. I mean, it's going to take a while for it to get up to this area, at least a week or two, I would assume. But, if that breaks, that would take the dollar all the way down to here, so around $80. So that would be, bad news if you have long exposure to the dollar, but very good for the stock market, typically speaking. So just some interesting stuff there. Let's look at XLF. See how the banks are doing. So not looking good here. In my opinion, XLF looks, you can see this kind of curling top here. And to me, it looks like we are, creeping up on a decent pullback. Now it's recovered pretty nicely from, just the opening. So you can see it gapped down this morning and it's kind of rallied to just get flat on the day. Now these two squeezes here, 39 and 78, those are something to watch out for. It does have some, resistance coming in at 24.71 and then 25.21. And that looks, right now like it could go either sort of way. Looks like, could kind of have sort of an exhaustion move into 25.21 before kind of coming back, resuming the selling. But not ready to do anything on that just yet. Let's look at some of the actual individual banks. So Bank of America, same thing. Looks like we get a move back to 34 before resuming the selling. Goldman. Now Goldman, I mean, it is at 100% extension from that low to high to low. So, I mean, I just don't really love anything here on the banks just yet. Being that I'm still really overall short the market, banks are one that I would like to kind of just continue to watch for, short exposure on it longer term. So let's look at Deutsche Bank, the worst looking bank there is right now. And yeah, still looks ugly. So let's see, let's look at Morgan Stanley. Yeah, and so I mean they're all looking pretty similar here. So you could argue that this, is sort of a flag pattern. And if that is true, then that would be kind of a bullish signal here for banks as a whole. You can see here, just without running anything on Morgan Stanley, there's all this overhead resistance right around 42.70. Wait, what is it? Yeah, so around 42.50, 43-ish. There is a lot of resistance there. I will go ahead and run just from this bigger high to low. 45.39 is right around the first 382, and then 46.17, the 34 EMA. All right, so just kind of wrapping up here. I don't really have much more to say, and I can't quit yawning. So if you are around this afternoon for the close, join me at 3:30 Eastern time, 3:30 New York time, and I'll be on live to trade the close. So thanks for joining me this morning, and I will talk to you soon. Take care.